What decides the sort of person that we grow into? We have just begun learning a brand new character. Her name is Wriglix. She was named one day after she was born. Her mother is Outlug and her father is Eeks. Today we want to learn who this new character is. So we need to know, what makes a baby become the sort of person that they become.
Who is Wriglix? How much does a person's name affect who the person becomes? So it was Outlug that named the baby, just by goblin tradition. What is the scariest thing about becoming a new parent? What about managing what those huge eyes see? We measure a person based on what they have done. A more important consideration is, what could this person do? What is this person capable of? So based on what this person might be capable of, a newborn baby is a very important, powerful person indeed.
Hello, and welcome. So, this is our newest world building video. We are Wild Art Fly Free and we are building a fantasy world. It's really great that you could join us. We are building our world out of stories, and our stories are made from things like plots and scenes and locations and characters. We like it when people suggest ideas in the comments, but you really don't need to. And, also, if you do offer suggestions, please remember that everything that we create is public domain, so anyone can use it. No worries. And especially, please know that we are always interested in your ideas.
We are Wild Art Fly Free and we are all about creativity. We are building a fantasy world out of stories. And we think up ideas and then we take them into our fantasy world and hand them out to characters or other things and see how that affects our world. So this time we are talking about the newborn baby goblin named Wriglix. Wriglix's dad is Eeks and Wriglix's mom is Outlug. Okay, so who is Wriglix? Some of her is nature. Nature is what you get from your DNA and how you are nurtured, how your mom and dad or whatever treat you. That's the other bit. So you get that mostly from your mom and dad too.
We have a shape when we are born. Then as we grow bigger we change. So, we have the question, how much of what we grow into is built in, and how much do we get from the environment? Are we who we are because of what we eat? How much is because of what our parents and teachers tell us? Well, our food and our parents and our teachers are all part of the environment. In the nature versus nurture debate, we say that food and parents and teachers are the nurture. So, nurture is the environment. The stuff that is decided at birth is the nature. That is a bit confusing. Environment is kind of like nature, isn't it? But for the nature versus nurture debate, then nature that is made out of berries and bees and bears, well, that is all on the nurture side, not nature. Sometimes words are weird.
How much does the appearance of this new character affect the other characters? Having a first baby certainly changes the mom and the dad. Owls beget owls. Turkeys beget turkeys. Owls beget owls, and turkeys beget turkeys. We are asking who is the new character, but we don't have much to go on, so we can talk about Wriglix's parents instead, because right, they're getting most of the nature and the nurture from her parents. And the single idea that we are playing with, a new baby is chaos. Outlug was an adventurer and an entertainer, and well, she still is. Now she is a mom. How will this affect her career?
Our second girl has the same green skin as Leather Guy, but she is wearing a dress of some sort made from scraps of cloth. It's actually denim if you dare to look close enough. She does have really nice hair though, and maybe the most distinctive smile. Do you think that she might be fashion conscious? Does she like her dress? Goblins don't wear shoes, normally. Would this lady want to set a new trend?
This young lady is Outlug. She is bossy and confident. Outlug is not afraid to slap the boys around when she thinks they deserve it.
Outlug braced herself, and prepared herself to meet her fate. She was in danger. She had to keep reminding herself that she was in danger. The people who were watching needed to know how afraid she was. So, the little goblin young woman, Outlug, felt herself being tied to the wooden target. Then Outlug watched Deadwolfishy pull out his big knife. And then the Goblin Viking Pirate King held it up to show the crowd. That knife was big, and it was shiny, and it was sharp. Then Deadwolfishy picked up a weed plant and showed it to the crowd. The plant had bright little flowers. Outlug had been told that she was like those flowers. And she should be very afraid, especially when Deadwolfishy swung the big sharp shiny knife to cut the heads off of all the little flowers. Outlug shrieked. And then she closed her eyes and whimpered. Outlug was as afraid as any goblin girl had been afraid, ever. Well, that's what Deadwolfishy wanted, wasn't it? That Outlug would show the crowd how afraid she was. So Outlug imagined that big, sharp, shiny knife flying right into her tummy. Now, Zigmemsen gave the pendulum a push and it swung out and away and Outlug swung with it. Then the pendulum slowed and stopped and swung back the other way. This is just like how they had practiced so many times before. And Deadwolfishy pulled out his big knife, and Outlug remembered to shake her head in fear and to whimper.
going along with the Viking pirate troupe. Outlug found that she was a bit of an actress, so she was on stage pretending to be scared as Devilfishy, the captain of the Viking pirates, pretended to throw knives at her, is an actress, and she wants to continue to be a performer of some sort as she grows older and they move west. Also, Outlug also wants to be part of the adventurers organization that the former goblins have created to look for adventure work. So Eeks, the daddy involved, gets to change diapers and take care of the young goblin baby, while so that Outlug can continue her career.
He knew. Outlug rolled her eyes at the realization. The one thing that she had sworn all of her young life that she would avoid. And now, this. She wiped her eyes, and realized just how angry she was. Worse. Outlug thought to herself, that she had only herself to blame. But no. There was one other. That one. Wasn't he responsible just as much as anyone else? He isn't stupid. He knew what might happen. But then, just like that, Outlug thought up an idea, and it was an idea that just jumped out and grabbed her by the heart. What if? Of course he knew what might happen, but what if? What if this is what Eeks really wanted? And with the thinking of that thought, Outlug started bawling her eyes out. And then, still crying uncontrollably, Outlug got off of her log and went to seek out the goblin who had done this to her. It wasn't far to where Eeks would be. So Outlug needed to stop from time to time to get herself together. She didn't want to be crying like a little goblin child when she told him he was going to be a dad. And Outlug let out a wail of despair. Eeks was going to be a dad, and that meant that Outlug was going to be a mom. The one thing that she had known she would never do. Not since she was a child herself, and her own mom made so many little baby brothers and sisters for Outlug to help care for. And Outlug remembered one brief time in her life, when she felt free. She was with her friend, Fukok, and they were hanging out near the mine opening. They stayed away from the houses. That's where the lady goblins cooked the meals and cleaned the clothes for the miners. And, that day Fukok and Outlug had snuck away. They knew that they would get in trouble later, and get the worst jobs. But just for a short time, while the sun was out, a brief bit of freedom would be worth it. And Outlug remembered, that was the first day that Outlug saw him. That strange goblin with the green coat and the green hat with a feather. The first time that Outlug saw Eeks, was at Dog's Digs. That was the mining area near Swan Ford. To Outlug, this new goblin man looked strange and even foreign. The other goblins in the area looked up as he passed by. He was talking to the dwarf guy, Chugskid. No one in Dog's Digs would know what to think of a goblin with a green coat and green hat with a feather. Goblins don't normally wear hats, unless it is to keep the head safe from the cold, or from being seen, or from flying stones and flying axes. But Eeks wore a hat, and it seemed to Outlug, he wore it just for the look of the thing. And, Outlug remembered, it just made him look strange. Not bad. Just strange. Fukok talked quietly so that only Outlug would hear. That hat is the same color as the coat. But, it's not like hats are made out of the same stuff as coats. Maybe it's camouflage, so that people and wolves don't see him. Outlug thought about that and then answered. It doesn't work then, does it? Everyone here saw him right away, and we all just keep looking at him. Do you think he wants to be seen? What is the opposite of camouflage? With that memory, Outlug found that she wasn't crying anymore. But, she must still look like a mess. So, she put on the fiercest scowl that she knew, just in case anyone looked at her. But, goblins are smart, and every goblin within sight of Outlug was purposely and pointedly looking anywhere but at Outlug. She went on to find Eeks. And she remembered. After the girls first saw Eeks at Dog's Digs, they heard about him. They learned that his name was Eeks and he came from far to the south. The next time that Outlug saw Eeks was in Mary Sunder. That's the cave system underneath Swan Ford. This time, Outlug and Fukok were with the goblin boy, Zig Memson. Goblin youths are not allowed in Mary Sunder, but no one was surprised to see goblins sneaking through the shadows. And they saw Eeks, walking with one of the town gnomes. Then, Eeks looked straight at Outlug. And he had a glint in his eye and a pointy little smile. To Outlug, it was like the goblin man was looking right into her eyes, but no. Really, she thought later, from that distance, he might have been looking at any one of them. Maybe he was looking at Fukok. And Outlug felt a twang of jealousy. And then, with those thoughts, the young Outlug became disgusted with herself for feeling that way. And so, with having remembered that memory, Outlug felt angry again. No, she knew it didn't make sense, to be angry about him looking at another girl, so long ago, when he might not have been looking at her anyway. But then, Outlug decided, Eeks deserved what he got and decided that she would be angry at him for the rest of his miserable life. And she walked on, looking for Eeks, but not too hard. Then, or at least, not long after Mary Sunder, Outlug became one of Eeks's students. And, over the days that followed, Outlug not only learned what lessons Eeks was sharing, but she also learned about life, and about herself and even a little bit about Eeks. She found out that he had been raised by humans, and she learned that he was shy about his goblinness. And, Outlug was going through some changes too. She was becoming a woman goblin. And, she was becoming more interesting to boy goblins and even men goblins, and... no. Never. Not to Eeks. Outlug would put that out of her mind. Eeks was a teacher, that's like a parent. Outlug is the student, that's a child. No good goblin or any other type of parent would have a child student want a adult teacher parent. And, Eeks is still the teacher as the goblins are with Eeks and the rich human, Dowwig. During that time, Eeks promised to help get the goblins equipment and weapons suitable for horseback. But Eeks failed, as did Dowwig. This failure is part of Eeks and Dowwig's personal growth, but it is also important in the maturing of the goblins. When you realize that no adult is perfect, you become an adolescent. It isn't until you can accept the failings that you can be an adult. But, Outlug was mature enough even then to feel more empathy toward Eeks than anger. As Outlug remembered, it was Jish who became so very angry. And it wasn't too long later that the goblins decided to run off on the Viking pirate boat. Outlug remembered feeling as much relief as she felt anything else. Part of her relief was how she was feeling toward Eeks. She wished she was more angry. And then the goblins were too busy to worry about their feelings. They had new jobs with the show. They had commitments and they contributed to the troupe. They all grew up fast during that time, with the pirate boat. And then, or not long after, the goblins saw Eeks again. Outlug was relieved and excited. But, when Eeks offered to the goblins that they could join him again, it would be, as the teacher-students thing again. The goblins felt they were past that. So, Outlug stayed with Fukok and the boys and they all agreed that they would stay with the troupe on the Viking pirate boat. Was that a tear in Outlug's eye as she watched Eeks ride away, maybe forever? Did she just make the biggest mistake of her life? Then, the sheep boat sank and the goblins, including Outlug, got on with growing into full adult goblins and adventurers. And after that time, it was almost now. And now Outlug was going to have a baby. And there was Eeks, and Outlug was crying, and it was all Eeks' fault. So she ran up to him and put her arms around him and dug her claws into him, just enough to get his attention. And then Outlug told Eeks that he was going to be a dad.
This time we are talking about the newborn baby goblin named Wriglix. Wriglix's dad is Eeks, and Wriglix's mom is Outlug. Okay, so who is Wriglix? Some of her is nature. That's in her DNA. She will get that from her dad Eeks and from her mom Outlug. And then the rest is nurture, right? Nature versus nurture. So nature is what you get from your DNA, and how you are nurtured, how your mom and dad or whatever treat you, that's the other bit. So you get that mostly from your mom and dad too. That is how Wriglix is shaped by her environment. How much does the appearance of this new character affect the other characters? Having a first baby certainly changes the mom and the dad. Owls beget owls. Turkeys beget turkeys. Owls beget owls, and turkeys beget turkeys. We are asking who is the new character, but we don't have much to go on, so we can talk about Wriglix's parents instead, because right, they're getting most of the nature and the nurture from her parents. So who is Eeks? Well, he's a goblin, and he is a goblin who was raised by humans. He was working as a teacher. It's more of for goblins, it would be a class on how to survive in alien society. Concluded that Eeks was going to be Eeks. No matter what goblins were or what humans were, Eeks would be Eeks. Eeks is our classic hero that really doesn't have that much wrong with him. So when Eeks let his students get away from him at the south end of Turtle Bay, and the adolescent goblins are on a Viking pirate ship, and it turns out they are working as entertainers. Eeks, in the meantime, has taken Lily the cart horse and building a relationship with the horse while they follow along after the ship on land. So that's how Eeks learns about the new life that the goblins are leading. Eventually, Eeks does catch up to the goblins, and they all have a little chat and decide that the goblins will continue on as Viking pirate adventurers. The next Eeks will be going west and catching up with the goblins, especially the now young woman Outlug, who he is going to have a relationship with.
Creativity is the path from chaos to perfection. For young children, perfection can be simple. They don't even think about their goals, they just know what they want to accomplish. Also, little kids are built to make sense from chaos. Okay, of course, just starting out, babies just want to be fed and cared for. So, until our baby starts to grow her teeth and claws, we can just focus on her parents. How will Outlug and Eeks deal with Wriglix as she demands acceptance, safety, approval, belonging and understanding? A new baby really doesn't ask for much. But a new baby does demand everything. Later, Wriglix will start speaking. That's when she will be more fun to hang around with. So, what will her first words be? And, just how young will a child be before we can start talking about their personal goals? That is, which of her desires and intentions will mark her out as someone who is unique? When will we stop thinking of her as just another goblin baby and know her as Wriglix?